Hello everyone, it's Christine here and I am back for another Roxy Journal of Stitchery project. Today we're going to be working on a slow stitch bowl in a design that I have come up with in my head. I've done enough prototyping that I'm confident it's going to work, and we'll be working on that together, and it's using hexagons. You might have seen my previous, sorry I just bumped the camera, video where I worked on this little pentagon bowl. So there's another video that I'll link to, and I'm also continuing to work on my slow stitch panel that will become a container as well. So there's separate videos on that also. But today it's going to be this bowl, and apologies for any of the sunlight. It's a beautiful winter sunny afternoon, so I am enjoying the sun coming through the window, so you might just get a few sun rays on things, but hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. I'll probably move us over sort of over here where I've got a bit of a block on the sun, but still the window open. I also found my copy of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, which was given to me in 1985 from my godmother Miranda. So dear Crystal, it says, to Christine, happy birthday with love from Miranda. And so yeah, as a kid I was known as Chrissy, and that's my yeah, very well worn and well loved copy of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, back when books were $3.95. Wow. So you can even see, yeah, the pages are almost falling out of there from being very, very well loved. So I thought we might, depending how I go, I might start to read you a little bit about Snugglepot and Cuddlepie while we do our stitching today. I'll see how well I can multitask, but yeah, it's a lovely little book. The Complete Adventures of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, that undoubtedly became one of Australia's best loved children's books. It's an enchanting bush world peopled with gumnut heroes and heroines, solid friends like Mr. Lizard and Mrs. Bear, and of course the villainous Banksia men. And it's played an important part in the imaginative background of Australian children. So there's that. So I first of all, to work out whether this design was going to work, I used my Epiflex little plastic templates, or I don't know what they are. Are they made out of, is it Perspex? I can't remember the exact material. It's basically a bendable plastic. And I wanted to make one that kind of came out like a flower, and I discovered that I could get the exact right sort of angles with the hexagons if I start with a square shape in the middle. So what I'm doing with these hexagons is joining them so they twist around. So it's not actually, and we'll get to see this when they stitch together, you're not going to do them in a straight line across. You're going to be joining them so they actually come around. So joining on that side, so that they'll actually, yeah, form the bottom shape. When I started doing my little prototype over here, I didn't actually stitch them right, and then I was like, why is this not working? Because I didn't have them joining on the correct side. So basically it's going to take you 12 hexagons for the inside and 12 for the outside, plus an extra 2 for the bottom piece, because I'm planning to put a hexagon as the very base bottom that will also provide the sort of stabilizing base to it. At the moment I've just got these pieces just with applique pins, just to check again that it was all going to work well. With these ones I just use sticky tape on my little prototype. But basically, yeah, 4 pieces around the bottom, and then 8 pieces around the top. So that's 4 plus 8 is 12, and then you need the pieces so that you have it on both sides, like this one here. You need a design on both sides. So it's, yeah, 26 pieces of hexagon that you need. So what I'm planning to do with them, actually let me first of all show you, it's the same method that I used in the pentagon bowl. What I've done is started out with cutting out some pieces of this felt, which is more of an industrial felt, so it's a bit more of a scratchy felt, but because it's on the inside it doesn't matter. Using my template to cut them out with my nice sharp fabric scissors, and then cutting a piece of fabric picking out where I want it on the design. So for example, if I wanted it there, I'd just be putting it there, cutting around with leaving a sort of a seam, I don't know what they call that. Essentially, yeah, the area that you're going to fold over and fold under, because you need about that much. Obviously, yeah, not always exactly the same amount of size around the outside, but you need something that you can fold over. And then I use my Yoo-hoo glue just to put some glue around the outside of the piece of the fabric, and then fold it over and fold it in, working around, and then give it a quick iron. I won't do that because I don't want to have gluey fingers for today's sewing. But basically that's how you form up your hexagon pieces, and I thought today we could spend some time doing some stitching into our little hexagon pieces. So I think I'll move this out of the way because we'll come back to the construction, and then we can spend some time adding some embellishment details. And then I can also show you how I am stitching around them with blanket stitch. And then hopefully if there's enough time, I'll turn off the video, start to sew the bowl together, and then show you that along the way as well. So we'll see if it makes one video or two videos, not sure yet. So I'll bring you down, so close your eyes for a moment. Hopefully that's not too close. So I picked out some pieces that I want to embellish. Which ones were they? I think it was these ones. And I'm not thinking I'll necessarily embellish all the pieces. Some of them, like this one, I'll just leave them plain, just with the blanket stitch around them, which I'll show you. Did I want to... Yeah, I'll have that one. I think I was pretty happy. I could probably embellish this one as well if I wanted to. Oh, and I've got this one here as well that I've started. So I might start with this one here, and we can continue embellishing it. What I've done is used a few different threads. I've used some of my, no, not that colour. Which colour was I using? This one. Some of my Appleton's wool for the little headpiece. So these are like little wattle blossoms, which are a type of blossom that we have in Australia on an acacia tree. And then I used some of my variegated, it's just an anchor one, to do the stitching around here, just to get a bit of variation, but to give that lovely sort of spikiness. So I'll show you how I'm doing that with sort of long and short stitch. So I was thinking I might just reverse it on this one and use this one for the headpiece, and then I might even, just for a bit of difference, I might even use this one, which feels like it's just sort of, it's not as flat of a cotton as this. Maybe it's not as sort of twisted or something. I don't know what brand this one is. By Hooding, so not sure. Hooding. Right, and we'll see how we go, telling you about Snugglepot and Cuddlepie once I get stitching. So what was I going to do? No, I wasn't going to use that one. I'll get myself going, and then we might try and do a bit of reading. Don't know, I've never tried that, reading while I stitch. It could be an absolute disaster. It is Saturday afternoon here. I had the longest sleep I can remember having had for quite a while. I slept for 9 and a bit hours last night, which was crazy. I'm just going to have a sip of tea. So yeah, 9 and a bit hours, slept right through. I do vaguely remember hearing, yeah, noises of Travis. He likes to have a roll on the sort of the floor of a morning, but yeah, just snoozed away and was amazed when I woke up. But it was much later than I'm usually waking up. Fine on a weekend, and I think that was partially it. I'd had quite a few allergy symptoms yesterday, so I think maybe they had tired me out. I'm just going to chop off my very messy end there. And so yeah, big sleep, but it's not one of those sleeps. Sometimes when you sleep too long, like what your body doesn't actually need, you feel really lethargic and unpleasant the next day, but I actually feel really good. So I think I needed it. I was actually hoping that I wasn't coming down with a cold or something yesterday, but the symptoms actually got better as the day went on, which normally with a cold you'd be feeling worse by night time, and I woke up feeling fine. But when I went outside with Travis and took him for a walk this morning, yeah, the symptoms started to come back. So I'm pretty sure it's probably an allergen. It's just, yeah, just irritating my system. So I haven't taken an allergy tablet. I try not to take medications and things. I just prefer to the extent that I can. But if it does continue on, I'll probably take one. It's not that I'm against sort of, yeah, things. I just prefer to first of all to kind of work out what it is that's going on, and then if I need the medication, I will have it. So I'm just going to distribute my stitches because it's a variegated thread. I want to get the different sort of colours around. And so I'm going to just do some stitches going from different parts. So some of them we're going the full length up the head. Some are just going to go part of the length. And just, yeah, distributing them around so that we get all of sort of one colour, not in the same place. It's going to be in different places. So it's going to a slightly lighter colour there, and then I think we go then to a darker colour in a little bit. So the variegated thread's great if you don't want to be changing your thread colours all the time. You can achieve a similar effect if you either twist different threads together or if you yeah, do change your thread and stitch into it with a different colour. So now we're getting some brighter ones. Distribute those around. And really the sky's the limit on the extent to which you want to decorate your pieces. You don't have to use, obviously, yeah, you might not find this fabric overseas. I think some folks in the US, after the last pentagon bowl that I made with some Snugglepot fabric, I think they had a look and found it was quite expensive to get the fabric. So find something that works for you. I think my friend Kim had found some fabric that she was going to, yeah, different fabric she was going to use, and hers sounds like it's going to make a beautiful, beautiful little pentagon bowl. But I thought rather than just repeating the pentagon bowl and doing it on a bigger scale, I was really keen to kind of come up with my own hexagon based bowl. But interestingly, starting with that square shape so that I get the right angles for it. Just love these sweet little characters. So we'll just open up see if I can prop my book open to start to tell you about Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. And this will be a refresher for me. Like I fondly remember the stories and I have imagery in my head, but I'm sure I will learn some things as I reread the copy. So here are the adventures of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. They were foster brothers, and this is how it came about. See, in my head, I was thinking that I don't think I'd actually assigned a gender to Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. I actually thought one of them, at least, was a girl, but no, foster brothers. When Cuddlepie was very small, that is, when he had only been out of the bud for a few hours, so they are little flower creatures, a great wind arose and, lifting him out of his mother's arms, carried him far across the tops of many trees and left him in a spider web. This saved his life, but again he nearly lost it, for a short-sighted old bird, mistaking him for a grub, sorry, I'm trying to read and make sure I don't stub my finger, was about to eat him up when a nut, beholding, shouted, "Bird, bird, mind the snake." The old bird, very frightened, flew away. Then the kind nut climbed up the spider web, lifted up the little cold, weeping baby, and gently carried him home. So that's the start. We'll just get this little piece finished, I think. Or maybe I can read a little bit more while I finish this off. Now, this was the home of Snugglepot, and that kind nut was his father. So the nut they're referring to is the eucalyptus trees, or the gum trees. They have nuts. So once the flowers have blossomed, they form into gum nuts. Sorry, this is just me adding my own little narrative in, because for those overseas you might not be as familiar with eucalyptus or gum trees. So here then lived Cuddlepie side by side with Snugglepot, and they grew strong and fat as you see them in the pictures. I guess we'll get to see the picture when we turn the page. One day a wise old kookaburra came to the neighbourhood. All the blossoms and nuts crowded in to hear him speak. Finish this off, I'll turn the page and then we'll continue stitching on the bottom, I think. Are we happy with how the hair's looking there? I think maybe just a few more in here. I suppose I may as well use up the thread as well, actually. So we will turn the page. See if there's a picture to show you. Yes, so there we are. There's our little gumnut babies. So they're little gumnut hats. And then we've got, I think that's a willy wagtail there. A bird. Oh no, it's a blue cap wren. So this is the wise old kookaburra. So we just finished with one day a wise old kookaburra came to the neighbourhood. All the blossoms and nuts crowded in to hear him speak. Oh, and that's him there actually, on the other page, the lecture. So that's our kookaburra there, and this is all the blossoms, the little people, the lecture it's called. He said, I am old, I have travelled, I'm just going to use my cup to prop the page. I've travelled, I have seen humans. Humans are strong as the wind, swift as the river, fierce as the sun. They can scratch one stick upon another and lo, there will be a bushfire. So just again, me cutting in. Here in Australia, yeah, we do have wildfires and what I think you call wildfires in other parts of the world, really bad bushfires. Summers can be quite scary in many parts of Australia with the bushfire threat. Just ever more extreme in their sort of temperatures and impacts. And so back to the book. They love the fire. The male human carries it about in his skin and the smoke comes out his nostrils. So I assume they're talking there about people smoking cigarettes. They whistle like the birds. They are cruel as the snake. They have many skins which they take off many times. When all the skins are off, the humans look like a pale frog. Isn't it interesting to think what our creatures out in nature think of us as humans? I do. Travis always looks at me rather, with a rather curious look when I am taking my clothes off and changing, or if I come out from the shower and I'm naked or something like that. He looks at me very, very strangely. He's probably thinking, where is the fur? Just put some shorter little stitches in down here, I think. So now Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were scared all over to hear of these things, so they went often to listen to the wise kookaburra. Isn't that funny? So they're scared, but they're still going to listen. These humans, said Mr. Kookaburra, are as bad, but there must be bad things in this world as well as good. It would be very awkward for me if there were no snakes to eat. Isn't that interesting? Wisdom of children's books. And Snugglepot and Cuddlepie thought very much about it all. One day they asked Mr. Blue Cap Wren, sorry. It's one of those words that's little phrases that's hard to say. One day they asked Mr. Blue Cap Wren if it were all true. Quite, said he. I have some relations living in the Sydney domain, and I know. So Sydney domain, that's the part of the world where our Roxy sisters, well, they didn't grow up in the domain itself, but in Sydney, where our Roxy sisters grew up, where Sarah still is. I want to see a human, said Snugglepot. In the distance, said Cuddlepie. So yeah, Cuddlepie is sort of thinking, nope, I don't want to see a human close up. Okay, well, so I don't think I need any more stitches in there. I'm happy with, as I say that, I put one more stitch in. more up that way. Okay, we'll tie that off. There we go. And then was I going to use this one? I think I might just alternate it and just use, yeah, the one that I used for the hair. I can probably use this one on another one which has a little skirt, which I'm not sure where that piece has gone. Let's see if I can get my Appleton's wool into this needle. Yes. Sometimes the wool doesn't use the method where you roll the knot or slide the knot down the thread. It's easier just to tie it at the bottom. Okay. So I'm just going to have another sip of tea, and then I'll put my cup back so I can hold the page open. So one very hot night when the cicadas were singing. And so cicadas are an insect here that come out in summer and sing loudly, sort of, yeah, hum and actually almost like a melodical sort of sound. They have like a, they're greeny sort of coloured with wings, and then when they then have a shell that ends up sort of stuck to trees when they transition. Used to collect the shells up as kids. So one very hot night when the cicadas were singing so loudly that Snugglepot couldn't hear his father snoring, he and Cuddlepie crept out of bed and out of the house. "Where are you going?" asked Cuddlepie. "To see the humans," said Snugglepot. "Only in the distance," pleaded Cuddlepie. Then they began their journey. When they had walked a long way, Snugglepot said, "It is nearly day. Let us pretend to be birds so that no one will know us." "Yes," said Cuddlepie, "but we can't fly." They found an old nest and took the feathers from it and dressed themselves in them. When the sun rose, they were far from home. In the little home, the kind father and mother and little baby brother had looked out all night long into the darkness, but Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were far away. No one had known them, but all who passed them said, "What strange birds." So I'll need to show you a few pictures that we've not seen. So that was them sneaking out from their little, you can see the eucalyptus leaves as their beds, and a little eucalyptus hut, because often the leaves might, like insects and things, might actually sort of almost glue them together or pull them together to make little homes. So although we don't have, obviously, the little gumnut babies, there are things that you see in nature that I can see why May Gibbs, considered this. And there they are in their little feathered nests, or feathered clothes, stolen from the nest. And then I guess this is giving us a clue what we might be reading about soon, and then some more things happening there. Beetles pulling a little sleigh. Excuse me. Just having a sip of tea, just a tickly throat, probably just the allergies again, I am pretty sure. So with these stitches, I'm just doing them sort of radiating out around like the little blossoms. So all day they walked upon a busy high road. See them in the picture, which is the picture I just showed you. Snugglepot is leaning out of a nut, helping himself to a bun. It is a grass root bun. At last it grew dark, and being very tired, they went to sleep in a hollow tree. Now it so happened that a very greedy owl lived in this tree. When Cuddlepie went to sleep, Snugglepot had covered him with all the feathers to keep him cosy. So when the greedy owl opened his eyes, the first thing he blinked at was Snugglepot's little fair body lying in the moonlight. Oh no. Pink mouse, and I'm so hungry, muttered the greedy owl. Then he pounced upon Snugglepot and flew with him out into the sky. At the flutter of wings, Cuddlepie awoke. When he saw the terrible thing that was happening, he screamed aloud, take me, I don't want to be left. I would rather be eaten with Snugglepot than live alone without him." But the greedy owl flew on, away, till he was but a speck in the distance. Poor little Cuddlepie tried to run after them, but the tears in his eyes were so big that he could not see which way to go. Now the greedy owl had a greedy wife, and in his haste to get his pink mouse out of her way, he had not noticed that he was carrying a gumnut baby and not a pink mouse at all. When he saw his mistake, he was so shocked that he let Snugglepot fall. Down, 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 he tumbled right through the window and into Aunt's house. A tired night nurse saw him coming, but before she could do anything, he had crashed and killed several babies. Oh no, poor little auntie babies. This was a blessing for Snugglepot, but it was sadly hard on the baby ants. Yeah, well, having a Snugglepot fall upon you in the nursery. So, and I've got a little knot here, so we'll just try and get the knot out. If not, we'll cut the... Sometimes you just have to cut your losses. Let's see. Oh no, it's come out. These Appleton's lengths are pre-cut, so I figure they're an okay length to work with. Probably a bit longer than I would normally do. So, "I'm so sorry," said Snugglepot. "It can't be helped," said the nurse. "What will their mother say?" asked Snugglepot, brushing tears from his eyes. "She won't know," said the nurse. "We have 300 babies in the house." Lots of ant babies. The nurse was a kind person. When Snugglepot had told his story, she patted his back and said, "I have a sister who works for a blossom lady near here. They will help you." She pointed the way to Snugglepot, and he soon found the home. Sorry, found the house. It was now early morning, and the blossom was taking her bath, but when the nurse's sister gave her Snugglepot's message, she hastily dressed and came to see him. While they were talking, a bird flew in with news that a poor little gumnut baby was down the road weeping and crying out in great distress. "It's my brother," cried Snugglepot. "Then come," said the bird, "get on my back," and she flew with him straight to where poor little Cuddlepie was wandering. When he saw Snugglepot, Cuddlepie ran into his arms and held him so tightly about the neck that Snugglepot was nearly choked. Snugglepot did not like kissing in public, so he said, "We must thank kind Mrs. Bird." "Fantail is my name," she said. "Mrs. Fantail," said Snugglepot. "Can we do anything to please you, ma'am?" Mrs. Fantail was a rather gadabout, so she said, "Yes, I'd be so obliged if you'd step up and mind my eggs for me while I pay some calls." Page. I'll give you a little look at the picture of the little gumnut baby falling down into the ant hole. On there we can see the blossom was taking her bath, so that was the little blossom lady. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were glad to be of use. They climbed up into a nest and she went off gaily. She was a long time away. "I think," said Snugglepot, "these eggs are getting cold. We'd better sit on them," said Cuddlepie. "Sit light then," said Snugglepot. "I will," said Cuddlepie, so they both sat on the eggs. The sun was warm and all the bees round the tea trees were singing a lazy tune. So tea trees are another one of our Australian natives. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie had been up all night and were tired, so they fell asleep and sat hard, and all the eggs were broken. Oh no. When they woke up, they cried aloud, "Oh, whatever shall we do?" A big lizard looked up from below. What's the matter?" he asked. When they told him, he only smiled. "Why, I can get you some eggs that will do just as well," said he, and he disappeared in a flash. Presently he came back with 2 lovely eggs, all warm, so they put them in the nest, and the lizard, having nothing to do, said he would ride them along their way. They chatted as they went along and soon became very good friends. By and by they entered a village. There they were surprised to see an editor writing all about them in his newspaper. Gumnut editors generally write backwards because they say it takes longer to read that way and the people think they are getting more news. Oh, it's funny. "Why, they are our portraits," said Snugglepot. "Oh, Mr. Lizard," they cried, please ride us away as fast as you can." When Mr. Lizard heard that they were travelling far to see a human, he said he would like to go with them. And if they liked, he would ride them all the way, for he had taken a great fancy to Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. And they already loved him, so it was agreed. He went back to say goodbye to his wife, promising to return at once. In the meantime, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie bought 2 little second-hand houses from a wayside shop. Gumnuts always carry money in their caps. "They will be warm to sleep in. The nights are getting cold," said Snugglepot, "and we can rest till Mr. Lizard comes back." I'll give you a look at their little sleeping pods. So these are the pods of, they're like a stick insect. So they've got like little sticks on the outside, but they're almost like a stretchy sort of, material. So that's their little homes that they bought using the money that they carry in their cups. So they settled in and both went fast asleep. In the middle of the night, a spotted cat came sniffing at their houses. He had a large family to feed and had had no luck that night. No. These little grubs will be better than nothing, he thought, and was about to seize them in his mouth when a terrible noise arose above. Let's turn the page. Scream after scream filled the night. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie sat up. The spotted cat fled, and down the tree slid 2 large native bears. So these are koala bears. Given we don't have bears. So there's the koala bears. There's the little second-hand houses for sale shop. So all the different insect houses that they pick their little houses out from. So the native bears, the koala bears, they were fighting, and as they hit each other, they screamed with rage. And so if you've not heard koala bears, they can make a horrible growling and sort of, screeching sound. You do hear them out in the bush. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were very scared as the big bears fought over them. Then a huge foot kicked them over and over, and they rolled down the tree to the ground. The grass was so soft and thick where they fell, and their little houses so snug that they were not in the least hurt, only very, very frightened. They lay quite still till daybreak, and then, seeing a crowd of nuts and blossoms, they crawled out of their camps and went to ask questions. Everyone was talking of the horrible affair in the night. This bit finished, and then we can read on a bit. I can see this isn't going to be done in one session. That's okay. It might be a multi-session bowl making. So I think that's pretty good. So we will tie that one off. So I think that will be enough decoration for this piece. While I've got my wool still in here, I might do some more work on this one where I'm just doing radiating stitches, and I think I started with this and then I used some of this one over the top, so I think I'll continue with that. I might work on one over here, and then I might use some different threads for the others. Ouch. So did I show you? Yeah, no, I did show you the koalas, didn't I? Yes. It's the same nearly every night, said one nut. We get no sleep at all. Why not dress up and amuse them, said Cuddlepie. People can't be cross when they are laughing. I'm just struggling with my book. Hard to keep the book actually at the right angle. I might need to put it down here. I'll put my scissors sitting on it. The pages are sort of not staying open. The nuts and blossoms were delighted with the idea, and everybody set about preparing their dresses. So they're going to do a dress-ups. That night, when the moon was up, they danced before the big bears. You can only see one in the picture. The other is higher up. Mr. and Mrs. Bear were so amused that they laughed all night. Mrs. Kookaburra heard the fuss and came to see what was happening. She too laughed all night, and the bush rang with laughter. So I don't know if she's figured out that her eggs. Oh no, it wasn't the Kookaburra that had her eggs swapped. It was the wren, was it? Can't remember which bird it was now. When it was all over, Mrs. Kookaburra said she would give a big dinner party in honour of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. They said they were delighted, but that was a polite fib, for they hated to see snakes and other dead things eaten. Because here in Australia, yeah, the kookaburras, the birds, yeah, they'll eat things like lizards and snakes. They will also steal things like sausages off barbecues. Just about this time, Mr. Lizard returned, and hearing what was afoot, he offered to go snake hunting for Mrs. Kookaburra. I know where there are plenty, he said, and being a most obliging person, he went at once, although he'd just been on a long journey. So I'm just doing stitches here, sort of overlapping them slightly in the centre, and then radiating them out, and then just hopping a bit further around so that I'm not wasting as much thread going backwards and forwards. The ones over the edge, I might just, oops. So I'll just use this up here. I'll get back to the story in a moment. I'll just finish off this bit of thread and then thread up with another one. It's actually so lovely reading this, and it's a really lovely little story. I might keep reading it myself afterwards. It's nice to return to childhood books, isn't it? In fact, I don't even mind that one being a bit more sketchy, sort of in the background. I don't even know if I need to go over and do some stitches with it. So I might then use. I don't know if this colour is going to. This is one of my beautiful wools from Karlund Yarns. Don't know if it's going to be too golden, but it might be nice, I think, actually, to have a bit of difference in the blossoms, because they do go through different colours as they dry out a bit as well, as they age in the process of coming out as a blossom, brighter, and then sort of, sometimes darkening a bit. And you can also get wattles that are different colours to different versions of the species. Probably have actually cut way too much of that, so I'm going to cut my wool in half using a chenille needle, I think this is. We'll see if I can slide this knot down without it getting too caught. So just about this time, oh no, we've already read that. By and by, so this is Mr. Lizard, he came back with quite a big bag of snakes. Mrs. Kookaburra was in raptures, and they all sat down to dinner. Not Mr. Lizard, he went to sleep. After dinner, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie went for a long walk together. On their way back, a snake popped out of her front door and said, "Aha, where is your friend Lizard?" "I beg your pardon," said Snugglepot. "Who killed my aunt and my mother-in-law and my..." Just turning the page. "3 cousins," she hissed. "I'm afraid I don't know," answered Snugglepot. "And who sat by while they were eaten?" she hissed. "Oh, excuse me," interrupted Cuddlepie. "There's something on your lip." "Only my breakfast," said Mrs. Snake. "Poor Mrs. Snake," said Cuddlepie. "Can't you afford anything but grass for your breakfast?" "I have birds for breakfast," said Mrs. Snake with dignity, "every morning." "Oh," said Cuddlepie, "you eat birds, so birds eat you." Mrs. Snake was furious. She went green with anger and spat at them. "My next meal," she hissed, "will be boiled lizard." Then she drew up in her wicked head and disappeared. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie hurried to where they had let their friend asleep. He was gone. They called, but no answer came. They shouted, still no answer. "The snake has got him," said Snugglepot. "And he may be dead," said Cuddlepie. "Oh dear, kind lizard, what shall we do?" Then a voice called out, "Where there's a creek, there's a croak." "Who's there?" said Snugglepot. The voice said again, "Where there's a creek, there's a croak." "I know what it means," said Cuddlepie. "It means we are to ask the frogs." "There's a creek quite near," said Snugglepot. Then from out of a bank of rushes scrambled a big-eyed frog. "I know the way into Mrs. Snake's house," he said, "and there in her dungeon is where you will find your friend." Without waste of time, they all hurried up the bed of the creek till they came to a deep pool where the frogs were playing their favourite diving game. They jump in, and the one who stays the long underwater wins. A little crowd had gathered to see the fun. As they neared the pool, Mr. Frog called out to a friend of his. "Lanky Legs," said he in a low voice, "these young nuts are in trouble. A friend of theirs is a prisoner in Mrs. Snake's dungeon. Will you help?" "I will," replied Lanky Legs. "Very well," said Mr. Frog. "We'll pretend to be in the game in case Mrs. Snake is watching. So you take one nut on your back and I'll take the other." Give you a look at the pictures because I'm going to turn the page. I don't think I showed you. Yeah, that was the kookaburra eating the snakes for dinner. The gumnut babies aren't very happy with the idea, and that was the snake threatening Mr. Lizard. And here's the frogs with their game and the diving pool. And you can see a little gumnut baby. I think this is about to happen, where they're going to take them down. So the Mr. Frog said, when we get under water, swim to the side and climb up through the hole that enters the cave. You know. I do, said Lanky Legs. Okay. Back to stitching. I was getting a bit carried away. I was just going to read the book to you, wanting to see what happens, seeing if they can save Mr. Lizard. Then they mounted the high diving rock, and Cuddlepie felt very nervous. Snugglepot whispered to him, "Hold tight and hold your breath," and gave his hand a squeeze. It was very exciting. Snugglepot went first, then Cuddlepie saw his turn come. He shut his eyes and held tight. The frog leapt from the rock. Splash! He felt the cold water close over him. He felt the quick movement of legs and body as Lanky Legs swam deep under the water. Then he felt himself rushing upwards, and just when his breath was all gone, they bobbed up on the surface of the water like a cork. Cuddlepie opened his eyes. They were in a big cave. Snugglepot and Mr. Frog had already landed. When they had shaken off the water and recovered their breath, Mr. Frog led the way along a dark passage. Presently they came to a large opening into another cave, and looking down they saw a sad sight. There, all bound, hand and foot, limp and unconscious, was a heavy stone on his head, lay poor old Mr. Lizard. As they looked, Lanky Legs turned pale and said he must hurry back as his wife was ill. Mr. Frog was made of different stuff. He went down into the dungeon with Snugglepot. Cuddlepie was left to keep watch. When they untied poor Mr. Lizard and rolled away the stone, he began to stir, and at last opened his eyes. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were overjoyed to see that he was alive. Hist, whispered Mr. Frog. They listened. Yes, there was a noise. Some stones rattled in the far darkness of the cave. Mr. Lizard sprang up and, seizing Snugglepot, placed him on his back and dashed up out of the cave, catching Cuddlepie as he went. He was very much alive now. I know the way, he said. Hold on to me. Oh, but where is Mr. Frog? Cried Snugglepot and Cuddlepie together. What will happen to him? Mr. Lizard stopped at once. Then they heard a faint voice calling from the distance. Go on, I'm quite safe. So they went on. But alas, brave Mr. Frog, he had purposely stayed behind, hoping from place to place to entice Mrs. Snake to follow him instead of them. And even as he called, I'm quite safe, the great snake caught him by his hind legs and swallowed him up. I don't remember this book being so gruesome. I suppose it's nature. So that's Snugglepot and Cuddlepie in the cave with poor Mr. Lizard there. So after travelling a long way through winding passages, they came out into a pretty place, all hung in green with warm sunlight shining through. Mr. Lizard sniffed and looked about. Why, said he, I believe we are in the hat shop. They peeped through a leaf curtain, and it certainly did look like a hat shop with lots of people buying hats. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were charmed. Let us buy 2 hats for the frogs who helped us, said Cuddlepie. They can give them to their wives. Good idea, agreed Snugglepot. So they went in and bought the 2 biggest hats in the shop. And it says in brackets, you can't see them in the picture. They are in another part of the shop. I'll show you the picture in a moment. So the Frogs' wives were very pleased with their new hats, and this must be the hat shop with the little gumnut blossoms sitting on the branches, because you do often get them getting caught on branches as they fall down. I'll show you this picture, which I'm sure we will get to soon. Definitely going to have another session of stitching. I might not read in the next session to make sure that you can actually get more of the stitching done, or I might go away and do some more stitching. Shall see. When they came out into the street, Snugglepot said, "What a large town it is," said Mr. Lizard. "Would you like to look around while I go back with the hats?" "Yes, please," they both answered. "That will be jolly. I won't be long," said Mr. Lizard, and he hurried away. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie looked about. Such a lot of houses and people and streets, it was bewildering. "Why, there's a cab stand," cried Snugglepot. "Let's take a cab and drive around." So they ran to the nearest cab. It had a little baby and looked kind. Cuddlepie went inside as he was smaller than Snugglepot, who hung on behind because there was only room for one inside. The baby stayed behind with the other cabs, who promised to take care of it. So this is a kangaroo that's acting as a little taxi with the little pouch that kangaroos keep their joeys in. That's the little pouch that Snugglepot is in. Oh no, Cuddlepie is in because he's smaller. And so the little joey baby kangaroo had to stay behind with the other kangaroos. I didn't know that this thread was... Oh no, it does have a subtle variegation in it, which is lovely. So it's got those slightly lighter golden tones and some slightly darker ones. Get this one finished and then we can turn the page. It's amazing how time flies when you're getting lost in a children's book and stitching. Hopefully you've got your stitching and you're just enjoying a bit of losing yourself in the Australian bush with some make-believe characters based on real creatures. It's lovely. I've actually just spotted I'll show you in the picture in just a moment, one of the images from the actual fabric that we're working on, or very similar to it. A flower. It might be actually a slightly different flower, but it's got that same sort of look as the one in the fabric. So just cut the tail off. Always just stretch them out. It does help having the felt when you're doing this kind of intense thread painting. So yeah, that flower is kind of reminiscent, but it's a different one. But yeah, you can kind of see the drawing similarities between these. And so that's all the cabs with all the kangaroos and the little joey, and that's them travelling along there. I don't know if this book goes in chapters. I think it just goes on and on. So we'll probably have to finish soon. I won't make this longer than an hour, but we might try and get this blossom done. I'm wondering, will I use... This is a slightly darker one. Or is it the same as that one? Or will I just use, maybe I'll use this one. Yeah, I'll use this one for a bit of difference. So just trying to evoke the wattle with its sort of, fluffy spikiness. They're very soft, you feel them, and they're just like a little soft pom-pom, really. Pom-pom blossoms. So back to the book. It was a splendid ride. Snugglepot had hard work to hold on, but was enjoying himself thoroughly. "Are there any humans near here?" asked the cabbie. He asked the cabbie when they stopped for a rest. "Why, yes," said the driver, pointing with his whip. "There's tons of them over there." "Could you drive us there?" asked Snugglepot. The cabman shook his head. Not safe, he replied. They'd kill you or shut you up till you die. Snugglepot looked at Cuddlepie. We must see one, he said, after coming all this way. Yes, but only in the distance, answered Cuddlepie. Well, said the cabman, scratching his cap, you'd better have a good time first. Have you seen the White City? No, they answered. You'd like that, said the cabman. So they got aboard the cab again and drove on. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were simply in love with the White City. They had honey sticks and dew drinks at the refreshment stall. Then they went on the switchback over and over again. Then they saw the lucky devil dance and everything there was to see till the last cab grew tired of waiting and said it must get back to its baby. Bush cabmen always consider their cabs and never make them hurry if they are tired or stand up if they want to go to sleep. When Snugglepot and Cuddlepie came out, the cab was gone. Perhaps he's got another job, said Snugglepot. Let's walk a little way and we might be able to meet him. As they were sauntering along, they noticed a crowd of nuts and blossoms in the distance. Let's go and see, said Cuddlepie, so they went. In the middle of a large railed-off space upon a wonderful steed sat a dark red-skinned nut. He held a long stick in his hand. He sat very straight and looked very proud. A proud man wearing a long coat was shouting, "Who will fight the champion of the red gumnuts? Come on, who will fight him?" "Me," shouted Snugglepot. No, said Cuddlepie, you mustn't, please, Snugglepot. Yes, I will, said Snugglepot, and he climbed through the fence and all the crowd shouted and clapped their hands. A large handsome beetle steed was brought out and long stick handed to Snugglepot. Each stick had a pad of spiderweb on the end so that the fighters cannot hurt each other. Snugglepot mounted on his steed, so he's sitting on a beetle, and the fight began. This was the first time Snugglepot had played this game. He had not even seen it, so Cuddlepie was very anxious. You will see him on the right, standing on the rails with his hands out. I'll show you the picture in a moment. At first, Snugglepot made many mistakes, and the man in the long coat had to keep shouting, "Begin again," for there was some things not allowed in the game, such as putting the stick in the other man's eye. The game was quite simple. The man who pushed the other man off onto the ground won the game. The red nut laughed at Snugglepot, and this made him angry. So he made a great push with his stick, and off went the red nut's cap. The crowd grew very excited and made a great noise, for no one had been able to beat the red gumnut. Snugglepot said to himself, I want to beat him, and I will. Then he found to his joy that he was getting on splendidly. His beetle liked him and was helping him. Add this stitch in. So that was them in the city, the dancing. That was them on their little, on a slide, on a leaf. And there they are on their beetles. So the other one's a little gumnut baby as well. Just a different variety, I guess. When Snugglepot pushed against the red nut, the beetle rose on his 6 legs and pushed too. When the red nut pushed his stick upon Snugglepot, the clever beetle backed, and all the time the red nut's handsome beetle was standing quite still. Snugglepot thought this wasn't fair to the red nut, so he said to his own beetle, "Go up and stand firm." The beetle went up close and stood firm. Then Snugglepot gave a great shout and a great push, and off went the red nut plump onto the ground. The red nut picked himself up and shook hands with Snugglepot, and the nuts and blossoms crowded round him, saying how strong he was. And then in the middle of it all, a strange thing happened. Someone pushed through the crowd, weeping bitterly. It was Mrs. Fantail, and close beside her came 2 large baby lizards. "Oh," she cried when she saw Snugglepot, "see what hatched out of the eggs you nursed for me? They won't leave me. They will hold on to my wings. I can't fly. I'm so miserable." So Mr. Lizard had swapped in the eggs, his baby lizard eggs, and into the nest. So there's the baby lizards holding on to the fantail. Snugglepot said, "Cuddlepie, we'd better tell about what," said all the crowd who were listening. "Please go away," said Cuddlepie. "It's only Mrs. Fantail who ought to hear." In the bush, everyone is polite when they are asked to be, so all the nuts and blossoms and the red nut went away at once. Then Snugglepot and Cuddlepie told Mrs. Fantail about the broken eggs and how kind Mr. Lizard had been. Poor Mrs. Fantail simply screamed when she heard. But when Snugglepot said he would ask Mr. Lizard to take the young ones back to their home, she stopped crying. Then both the young lizards began to howl. They said they didn't want to go. They wanted to stay with their little mother. This was awkward. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie got redder and redder. They felt so ashamed of all the trouble they had brought to poor Mrs. Fantail. "I'll tell you what," said Snugglepot. "You stay here, please, Mrs. Fantail, and we'll go and find Mr. Lizard." And he and Cuddlepie ran away, feeling very glad to be away by themselves where they could talk about it all. After hunting for a while, they found Mr. Lizard at the photographer's. When they told him what had happened, he turned so pale that the photographer said quite crossly, "If you look so white, you won't come out at all." But when they told how the young lizards wouldn't leave Mrs. Fantail, Mr. Lizard was very upset and his tail began to tremble. The photographer popped out from under his hood. "You'll have 3 tails in the picture if you twitch about." Having another sip of tea. "If you twitch about like that," he said, very angry, but Mr. Lizard was too upset to stand still any longer. "Excuse me," he said, and rushed out of the place. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie found him outside, kicking the wall and saying, gum it all, what a fool I am." "Why?" asked Cuddlepie. "Because I don't know whose home I took the eggs from, so how can I take them home?" This was most awkward. "Oh, I know what," said Cuddlepie. "What?" asked the other 2 breathlessly. "You can adopt them, Mr. Lizard," said Cuddlepie. "Of course," said Snugglepot. "But what will my wife say?" said Mr. Lizard. "Oh, well," said Cuddlepie, "you won't know that till you get home." "But I can guess," muttered Mr. Lizard. When they said goodbye to Mrs. Fantail, who flew happily home and had seen off Mr. Lizard with his 2 adopted children sitting on his back, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie heaved a sigh of relief. "What shall we do now?" said Snugglepot. "Nothing," said Cuddlepie. "That's a good idea," said Snugglepot. So they sat down in the lacy shadow of a boronia bush and soon fell asleep. So I think that's probably enough of me reading, because my voice is getting a bit tickly with it. And we have got to the hour point, which I can't quite believe that I've probably only stitched 2 of these little pieces, but that's okay. I hope you've enjoyed getting lost in the world of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. I definitely have. Or if it's not for you, hopefully you've just fast-forwarded through or put me on mute and just enjoyed your own quiet solitude while you stitch. So I think that's rather lovely with the different tones of it. I'll probably still do the other ones as well. I'll just have to make sure it's still sort of keeping to size, but no, once it's stretched out and once it's backed on, it will be perfect. So I'll leave it there. I'll definitely be back probably for another episode. I might not do the reading. I'll see what you say. I'll post this one, and if you want a bit more reading of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, we can do that. Oh, I just noticed one of my pages is even actually falling out. But thank you for for joining me, and you take care. Hope you're having a lovely relaxing day or evening and just having some special time for yourself. Bye everyone.